Right, listen up, because what I'm about to tell you will absolutely blow your mind. Newcastle United's entire future could be about to change in ways you wouldn't believe. And if you think you know what's coming, trust me, you don't have a clue yet. We're talking about massive financial shake-ups, injury comebacks worth over 100 million quid, and transfer battles that could define the club's next decade. But here's the thing. I'm saving the absolute bombshell for last, the story that's got everyone at St James's Park buzzing right now. Before we get to that juicy bit though, I've got two other massive stories you absolutely need to know about. So stick with me through all three, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why Newcastle fans should either be celebrating or seriously worried. Let's dive straight in. Alright, let's start with something that sounds complicated, but is actually quite simple once you break it down. The Premier League has just announced some brand new rules about how much money clubs can spend, and this could be absolutely brilliant news for Newcastle United. So here's the situation. Starting from the 2026 to 27 season, there's going to be a completely new system for managing club finances. Think of it like this. Imagine you're given pocket money by your parents, and they tell you that you can only spend a certain amount of that money on sweets and toys. That's basically what the Premier League is doing with football clubs, except instead of sweets, it's player wages and transfers. The new system is called Squad Cost Ratio, or SCR for short. Under these rules, clubs will only be allowed to spend 85% of their football revenue, that's the money they make from ticket sales, television rights, merchandise, all that stuff, on their squad. This includes player wages, agent fees, and transfer costs. Now, why is this good for Newcastle? Well, clubs will also get what's called a multi-year allowance of 30%. This means if a club really wants to push the boat out and spend more than that 85% limit, they can do it, but they'll have to pay a special levy, which is basically a fine. And once they've used up all their allowance, they'll face sporting sanctions if they keep overspending. The brilliant thing about this for Newcastle is that it levels the playing field a bit. Clubs with absolutely massive revenues, like Manchester City and Manchester United, won't be able to just throw unlimited money around anymore. They'll have to be more careful, more strategic. And Newcastle, who've been building smartly anyway, could really benefit from this approach. There was another proposal on the table called top-to-bottom anchoring, which would have been even stricter. Under that system, clubs wouldn't have been allowed to spend more than 5 times the amount earned by the team that finished bottom of the league. But here's the thing, 12 clubs voted against the idea, 7 were in favour, and 1 didn't vote at all, so that particular rule didn't make it through. The Premier League also introduced something called Sustainability and Systemic Resilience Rules, which is basically a fancy way of saying they're going to check that clubs aren't going to go bankrupt. They'll look at 3 things: whether clubs have enough working capital, whether they've got enough cash available, and whether they've got positive equity. Think of it like making sure you've got enough money in your piggy bank for emergencies. What's really interesting is that these new rules are meant to give every club a fair chance at success. The Premier League has been working on this since 2023, consulting with all the clubs, their finance teams, lawyers, and even getting independent experts to weigh in. They've been testing these rules this season without actually enforcing them, just to see how they'd work in practice. So what does all this mean in simple terms? Newcastle won't have to worry quite as much about competing with clubs that have bottomless pockets. Everyone will be playing by the same rules, and those rules reward clubs that are smart with their money and generate good revenue. Given that Newcastle have been absolutely brilliant at increasing their commercial income and filling St James's Park week after week, this could be the break they needed to really compete at the top level.
Right, now let's talk about something that will put a massive smile on every Newcastle fan's face. The cavalry is coming back. Eddie Howe is about to get a huge boost ahead of the massive clash against Manchester City. And when I say huge, I mean we're talking about £105 million worth of talent potentially returning to the squad. That's not pocket change, is it? First up, there's Tino Livramante. This lad has been absolutely brilliant for Newcastle when he's been fit. And the good news is, he's been training during the international break. Howe said he's very close to returning, which is fantastic because Livramante brings so much energy and quality down that right side. The manager was full of praise for how professionally the player has handled his injury, working hard with the physios and doing everything right to get back to full fitness. Then we've got Anthony Gordon, who's also very close to making a comeback. Gordon trained well during the break, and Howe said it's touch and go whether he'll be available for the City match. They're going to make a very late decision on him, which means he's definitely in contention. When Gordon's on form, he's one of Newcastle's most dangerous players, so having him back would be absolutely massive. And here's the really good news. Nick Pope has trained without any problems after recovering from concussion. Having your first-choice goalkeeper back is always crucial, especially when you're facing a team like Manchester City who can score goals for fun. But wait, there's more! Both Sandro Tonali and Joe Linton are available as well. There were doubts about them over the past fortnight. Joe Linton picked up a scrape against Brentford, and Tonali was pulled out of Italy's World Cup qualifier against Norway. But both are ready to go, which means Howe has got some proper options now. This is absolutely crucial timing because Newcastle are in a bit of a sticky situation. They're still fighting on 4 fronts, which is brilliant, but here's the scary part. If they lose to Manchester City and other results go against them, they could actually drop into the relegation zone. Yes, you heard that right, the relegation zone. That shows you just how tight things are in the Premier League right now. Howe's been asked whether he sought assurances from the club's owners about his position, given the challenging run of form, but in typical Eddie Howe fashion, he said he hasn't asked for any backing. He's just focused on the work, on the training pitch, showing that he and his team have the expertise to guide the club forward. That's the kind of attitude you want from your manager. Head down, getting on with the job, not worrying about politics or pressure. So, Lewis Howe could start against City, and we might see quite a different-looking team compared to the one that lost at Brentford 2 weeks ago. With all these players coming back, Howe can shuffle his pack and maybe catch Pep Guardiola off guard. It's going to be fascinating to see what team Newcastle put out, because they've got options now. Proper, quality options.
And now, here it is, the big one. The story I promised you at the start. Newcastle United are about to go head-to-head with their biggest rivals, Sunderland, in a transfer battle, and this one's got drama written all over it. Both Newcastle and Sunderland are reportedly interested in Matteo Guendouzi, the French midfielder who used to play for Arsenal. Now, before you get too excited, let me give you the full picture of what's going on here. Guendouzi is currently at Lazio in Italy, but things aren't going brilliantly for him over there. Italian reports say he's struggling to adapt to manager Maurizio Sarri's 4-3-3 system. And here's where it gets interesting. Lazio are having financial problems which could force them to sell players. They'd prefer to wait until summer to sell Guendouzi, but if the right offer comes in during the January transfer window, they might have to consider it. The Italian club values Guendouzi at somewhere between 25 and 30 million euros, which works out to roughly 26 million pounds. That's not an insignificant amount of money, especially under those new financial rules we talked about earlier. Now, here's where opinions get interesting. The Chronicle, Newcastle's local newspaper, isn't convinced this would be a good move. They reckon Guendouzi isn't the quality of player Newcastle need in their squad. They point out that he struggled when he was at Arsenal, and there haven't been much evidence since then to suggest he's good enough to play for a top Premier League team. That's quite harsh, but they're not wrong about his Arsenal days being a bit turbulent. But that's not the only transfer story swirling around. There's also talk about Newcastle being interested in Jordi Mokio, a young defender from Ajax. Sky Sports reckon that whilst Ajax are trying to extend his contract, Mokio isn't convinced by their sporting project at the moment. Newcastle are supposedly watching this situation closely because they're looking to strengthen their defence with high-potential young players, and Mokio fits that bill perfectly. Manchester United are also interested, as are German side Eintracht Frankfurt. The young lad will apparently choose his next club based on which sporting project appeals to him most and, crucially, where he'll get the most playing time. But again, the Chronicle has its doubts. They're not sure Newcastle should go for someone as untested as Mokio. They point out that there's been a pretty poor recent record of players coming to the Premier League from the Netherlands, and that's a fair point. Newcastle needs someone with more experience in that centre-back position, especially given how important it is to their system. So, what does all this mean? Well, Newcastle are clearly looking at the January transfer window as an opportunity to strengthen, which makes sense given their injury problems and the tight situation in the league. They need reinforcements, but they also need to be smart about who they bring in. There's no point spending £26 million on a player who might not be good enough, especially under those new spending rules. The Guendouzi situation is particularly interesting because of the Sunderland angle. Imagine if he chose Sunderland over Newcastle. The banter would be absolutely relentless. But realistically, if Newcastle want him, they're in a much stronger position to get him than Sunderland are. So, there you have it. 3 absolutely massive stories that could shape Newcastle United's immediate future. We've got new financial rules that could level the playing field, a potential injury boost worth over £100 million just in time for the Manchester City match, and transfer battles brewing that will keep us all entertained through the January window. The next few weeks are going to be absolutely crucial for Eddie Howe and his team. They need to start picking up points, they need those injured players to come back and hit the ground running, and they need to be smart in the transfer market. One wrong move and things could get sticky, but get it right and Newcastle could kick on and have a really strong second half of the season. What do you think about these new spending rules? Are you excited about the players coming back from injury? And would you take Guendouzi at Newcastle? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our Newcastle United content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.